Thank you, Sir Christopher. Pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I join others in congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Paisley and Renfrewshire North, in bringing this important debate today, and certainly note that, as was mentioned by the member for Easington, the number of members here taking part, showing the real importance that this highlights. I would also welcome my honourable friend's bill and commend that to members and the work that he's doing to end the practice of firing and rehiring. The days of being worried for your life when you go to work should be long gone. Gone too should be the days when staff had to put up with salaries that didn't pay the bills and exploitative contracts that take advantage of job insecurities. Employers have a duty to look after their staff, and it's even more important in these difficult times that workers are properly awarded with a real living wage and working conditions that allow them to have a comfortable life. It was a tough slog to get the employment rights we enjoy in the UK, and we cannot let them be one of the casualties of this crisis. One easy step the government could take would be to support my honourable friend's private member's bill to stop firing and rehiring on less favourable terms. They could also make sure employees understand their existing rights and their working mechanisms to make sure employers meet their obligations. I know many in the government benches aren't great fans of workers' rights. That's clear historically, as many in ex-mining communities, such as my Midlothian communities, would testify, or more recently with the Trade Unions Act of 2016, Conservatives have done all they can to undermine trade unions and collective bargaining of rights of workers, and perhaps they prefer to leave working practices a bit like the way Number 10 seems to be operating, a Wild West where following the rules and showing respect for others goes out the window. Take, for example, the rights of women and working mothers in particular, as was touched on by the honourable member for York Central. I want to do a bit of focus on that in my comments today. Without action, there are growing fears that this pandemic could set women's employment back a generation. Unlike previous recessions, many of the sectors most devastated are major employers of women, such as retail and hospitality jobs. We know women are more likely to be in insecure contracts, have greater caring responsibilities, and be in a precarious position over the coming months when jobs are on the line. A joint report from Maternity Action titled "New and Expectant Mothers in the Front Line" cites a TUC survey in June, where 1 in 4 pregnant women and new mothers surveyed had experienced unfair treatment or discrimination at work, including being singled out for redundancy or furlough. In the same month, a survey by the Office of National Statistics found that parents were almost twice as likely to report that they'd been furloughed, at 13.6%, when compared to workers without children, 7.2%. And while I'm grateful that furlough has been extended eventually, there are still fears that many hundreds of thousands of furloughed jobs could still be lost, with a new wave of discrimination when the scheme winds down. There's another private member's bill the government could throw its weight behind, as introduced by the member for Basingstoke, on pregnancy and maternity protections. I would certainly urge them to do so. This would be similar to the legal framework used in Germany, strengthening redundancy provisions for pregnant women and new mothers, so jobs are less likely to be put unfairly at risk during maternity leave. It could also be done swiftly and benefit thousands. Why wouldn't the government embrace such a cost-effective solution? I know in theory extending maternity and paternity leave regulations entitled "a suitable alternative vacancy be offered where one is there" is not without cost, but it has so many benefits too. Similarly, women's rights and protection when pregnant are there in the existing health and safety guidance, and I think it is important just for the record, because there does seem to be at times some confusion around this in comments we hear from some members. Pregnancy is not an illness, and I think it's very important that we're absolutely clear about that. But the guidance that is there is often little known or understood. If they cannot work from home, employers should undertake a risk assessment of their pregnant employee to determine what steps must be taken to make the workplace safe for them. If the employer is unable to provide that workplace that meets these requirements, a pregnant woman must be suspended on full pay if no suitable alternative is available. When the UK government gravely warned pregnant women about the dangers of the Covid-19 virus, they could and should have clarified these rules too. Instead, many women have reported being forced to take annual leave or unpaid leave, or even use maternity leave early, when the pandemic meant they couldn't safely perform their roles. Surveys have found that only around half of pregnant women have had the risk assessment carried out, and equally few feel confident that their employer will actually accommodate, within accordance with the Act, the resultant outcome of that risk assessment. Surely, looking after pregnant women should be a priority for any government or any civilised society. The UK Government's response to pregnant women and mothers who have been unfairly treated has been to advise them to take matters to an employment tribunal. Now, I'm delighted to see this Damascene conversion to the value of employment tribunals, given the unions had to drag the government through the courts to get rid of the fees that prevented access to these and justice to those who couldn't afford it. But I am pleased that they did so. Tribunals are a vital tool, but early prevention in disputes is a far better cure. So why not get the guidance right in the first place? Why not make these issues legally enforceable and put deterrents in place for bad employers? Why put all the extra stress and pressure on the employees to fight their corner and put extra pressure on the tribunal system already feeling the strain? So far, from written questions I've posed in these matters, there are very few answers coming my way, and they don't offer much comfort to taxpaying workers struggling to get by while facing discriminatory practices under the cover of the current pandemic. I would urge the Government to improve the commitment to employment rights, tighten up laws where necessary, and we've heard a few examples today, and make sure the Government really does wrap its arms around everyone by protecting them from unfair employment practices.